Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our freshman parent coffee with the counselors. We're so happy that you could be with us today on this rainy, blustery day, but we're glad you're here. And again, we are recording, so and if anybody misses this, they'll be able to see it. And we're asking all participants to please make sure that you mute yourself when you come into the call so that we don't have any background noise and so that everybody can hear. I'm Ruth Kerrigan. We will be introducing everybody in a few minutes, but I wanted just to go over today's agenda with you. And here we go. So the first thing that we're going to do this morning is we're going to meet the staff. We're going to talk about how school counselors can help. We'll talk a little bit about our Panther Pathways in our school counseling curriculum, what to do now, some important tools, and then there'll be plenty of time at the end for questions and conversation. Even though the PowerPoint I think is 13 slides long, there'll be lots of opportunities for you to ask questions. Again, anybody coming into the call, please mute yourself so that it doesn't disrupt the presentation. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is actually introduce the school counseling staff to you. Let's wait until they get up on here. And okay, we are going to actually kind of start at the bottom. And certainly last but not least, but we're going to actually introduce Megan Rivera. So do you want to come on, Megan?
He's on the phone.
He's on the phone. Okay. That's what happens when you're at work. Okay. So we'll go next to Peyton Bradshaw.
Hi, I'm Miss Bradshaw. I'm one of the school counseling interns here.
And Peyton, where are you doing your program?
I'm doing my program at Providence College.
And how many hours is your internship?
So for Providence College, I'm only required 300, but I'll be doing hopefully 450 to be certified in Massachusetts.
Okay. All right. Tony.
Hi, I'm Miss Campbell. I'm an intern as well, and I attend Bridgewater State University.
And your internship is, I think, 700 hours, right?
It is, yes, 700.
All this wonderful free time they're donating to the kids at Whitman Hanson. And then Caitlin Robichaud, are you on the call?
Yes. Hi, I'm Caitlin Robichaud. I am one of the adjustment counselors here, but I also run our BRIGHT program. It's a program for students. So if any of your students have an extended absence, whether it's for medical, mental health, whatever it may be, we have a program that helps get them back into the school, transition back in, catch up on their schoolwork, get some extra check-in time with me so they can feel successful and safe at school.
Okay. Allie. Thanks, Caitlin.
Hi, I'm Allison Seiden. I'm one of our school adjustment counselors. This year I'm seeing 9th and 11th graders, but I follow them throughout their 4 years. And my primary responsibility is to see students for counseling around social and emotional wellness.
Great. Okay. The next person on our list is Laura Dalton, and she is not on the call this morning because she's primarily working with grades 10 and 12, but she would have a similar role to Mrs. Seiden and working with the social emotional needs of students in grades 10 and 11. So next up is Mr. Amato.
Good morning and welcome to Whitman Hanson, all the freshman parents. Glad to have you with us today. My name is Dom Amato and I'm a school counselor and I have last names Q through Z.
Okay, Mrs. Cunha.
Good morning. My first name is Maggie Kate, and I am school counselor with students' last names M through P.
All right, Mrs. Seelig.
Good morning, everybody. I am Courtney Seelig, and I work with students with last names G through L.
Okay, Mrs. Dowd.
Hi, my name is Sarah DeMello. I am working with students last names C through F. I am currently covering for Maureen Garrett, who is out on leave.
Okay, and I'm Ruth Kerrigan. I'm the department chair and also a school counselor, and I have students whose last names begin A through B. And Ms. Rivera, are you available yet? Are you
Yes,
still
sorry, I had to take a phone call.
Okay.
I am the new administrative assistant, so if you guys need anything, you can just give me a call or come in. I'd be happy to help you.
And Megan is replacing Kathy Getchell, for those of you that knew Kathy. And Megan has been a wonderful addition to our staff. She'll help with work permits too. So if your kids need those in the next year or so, she's the one to see for that. So anyway, welcome. We're so happy that you're here. Now that you've met the staff, let's kind of get going into our program. So the one of the things that's a little bit different this year is that our kids aren't seeing, sorry, I'm trying to get this PowerPoint to move and it's not moving. Here we go. So the students are seeing us a little bit differently. In the past, kids could just come whenever they wanted, come into the counseling office, and it was great because we were hustling and bustling with activity all the time. But unfortunately, we can't have that anymore because of COVID. So we need to control the amount of students that are in the office at a certain time. So we are asking kids to use this online appointment form, and it seems to be working really well. So these QR codes are posted all over the school, and all the kids need to do is scan their phone camera with this. A form opens up, then we get an email saying a student needs to see us. So we think it's working really well. Obviously, if there is an emergency, students are welcome to come down to the school counseling office. We will, make sure that they are seen. But this form seems to work pretty well. So in terms of parents, if you need to get in touch with us, on the back of the handout that we emailed you, I'm not sure if you had a chance to download it, but there is a complete list of contact information, all the school counselors, their email addresses, their phone numbers. So you're welcome to use that mode or use the QR code if you need to get in touch with your school counselor. One of the things that we wanted to just touch on is that a number of you asked some questions prior to the program. And so we're going to do our best to answer those. And then, of course, we'll be available to answer questions at the end. You're also welcome to put questions in the chat. And by the way, I forgot to mention it, but the PowerPoint and the handout, we send it to everybody. So if you need to use that, you're welcome to refer to it. So one of the questions that we got from a parent was, I've heard the old term guidance counselor. Now I hear school counselor. What does it mean? What type of certifications do school counselors need to have? So we wanted to give you a little bit of information on that. So first of all, to become a school counselor, as you heard when we were introducing our interns, a school counselor needs to have a bachelor's degree, which is a 4-year degree. Then they need to go to graduate school. Then they need to do an internship. So our interns are doing between 450 and 700 hours. At that point, once they've met all of those requirements, they can then apply to become a school counselor in a school in Massachusetts. So it's definitely, we are highly qualified before we even get into the school. For a teacher, maybe a student goes to Bridgewater State or Stonehill, they do a little student teaching in their last year of college, and then they can get a job right away. And without having a master's degree, they then have 5 years to get it. So for school counselors, adjustment counselors, those credentials, we require more to actually start in the profession. So again, that's a master's degree plus a huge internship program and then a position. And we have to be certified by the state of Massachusetts. So for school counselors, we really look at 3 domains. We're looking at college and career. So we spend a lot of time over the time that we work with your kids and getting them ready for what happens after high school. And again, not everyone goes to college, but we want to get them ready for that next step. We also spend a lot of time on academics and academic advising and helping them make a plan to get where they want to go. And then the 3rd domain is actual social and emotional. So as a school counselor, we're covering all of those domains. What makes us a little bit different than an adjustment counselor is that the adjustment counselor focuses primarily on that social emotional domain. Allie or Caitlin, do you want to add anything more about that in terms of the difference between school counselors and adjustment counselors?
Sure. So for school counselors and adjustment counselors, the main difference is kind of that our primary focus. So you can see from the grid that school counselors also do a lot of college and career and academic. And while we might touch on those things as part of, social and emotional counseling, our primary focus is on, working with grief, anxiety, depression, other things that impact your student that limits them from accessing their schooling while they're here. So things that are on their mind, things that take them away from that academic piece. So we just try to help them access their education by looking at social and emotional wellness.
Great, thanks, Allie. And in terms of the term guidance versus school counselor, guidance is kind of an antiquated term to use. National Association for School Counselors is the American School Counselor Association. The Massachusetts Agency for School Counselors is called the Massachusetts Association of School Counselors. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we adopted the term school counselor rather than guidance counselor. So that is how it works here. So hopefully that question is answered. If there's anything else that we need to cover, we can happy to do that in the questions. So one of the things that we wanted just to briefly touch on to give you an idea of what else school counselors do is that we work with your kids on what we call our Panther Pathways Initiative. We want to make sure that when your students are ready for graduation 4 years from now, that they are ready to take that next step after college. So yes, we're getting ready to transition them into high school. In fact, we're starting our freshman groups on Thursday, so we get a chance to know the students a little bit better. But we want to get them ready for what happens after high school. So we have a school counseling curriculum, and this is something that happens for all students, so we can guarantee that everyone is having access to high quality school counseling. So in 9th grade, some of the things we'll be doing during social studies classes, we'll be working with them on the Holland Career Interest Inventory. We'll be doing Peace Builder workshops in signs of suicide, and workshops in health classes. In those 2 workshops, we actually work with the school adjustment counselors as well. We have our early college planning workshop for parents. We're in the process of setting that up, but that will be sometime this fall. Our freshman parent coffee with the counselors. We'll be having career connections fairs. Our interns will be running those. Again, we're still figuring out how we're going to do that since we can't have people in the building, but that will happen. And then you can see, I'm not going to read through everything, but in grades 10, 11, and 12, there is a sequential plan so that it's a stepping stone. We're building those cornerstones so that by the time your kids get to senior year, they should have a pretty good idea of what direction they're looking for. And again, we're working with them and helping them plan all along the way. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Amato and Mrs. DeMello to really talk about, as a freshman parent, what should you be doing right now?
Thank you. Again, welcome to Whitman Hanson. We've started, we're 2 weeks into it, a little over 2 weeks into it. So certainly the biggest item that you can do right now as a parent, working with your child as you come into Whitman Hanson. I'm sure many of you maybe have, maybe a junior or a senior student maybe, and the freshman is now coming along. But for many of you, this is maybe your first child or your oldest child. So it's your first foray into the high school. Infinite Campus is certainly a tool that you want to make sure you know, and that you and your child can monitor their daily or weekly academic performance. I mean, obviously, we're just starting the school year, but I do want to give you a note as far as Infinite Campus. Not all teachers post in the same way. Some teachers might post an update on a daily basis as we get rolling. Some might do it in the middle of the week. Some might do it at the end of the week. So just a suggestion, and I had a son who graduated a couple of years ago, and I have a senior right now, a senior at Whitman Hanson. I think if you could maybe not have a daily search with your child, maybe a couple times a week, you could sit down, find some common time, and just kind of review some things, because grades will start to get posted as we start to move forward, but you don't want to stress over it. And because some teachers may not post regularly, an assignment may not have been updated until maybe a day or 2 later. So if it's in as a 0, you don't want to get too upset and too nervous. Another way to circumvent that, if you have questions, certainly, is you can email your child's teacher. Teachers, generally, it's their first and last name, first.last@whrsd.org, but you certainly can email or call any teacher with questions or concerns. I think monitoring Infinite Campus is a good way to, keep track of grades, attendance, and things of that nature. It's important for freshmen to know that they're starting to build their credentials, their transcript right away. Sometimes people come in, freshman year is not that important. It's just my starting point, but all 4 years count, all 4 years matter, and we want the freshmen to have that work ethic right away as they come in. And I think it's really important that they get off to a good start, and using Infinite Campus is a really important tool to monitor their progress. We do have an attendance policy. I think it's important that, the child should attend. In this age of COVID, obviously, we have some, maybe an asterisk on that, and I'll get to that in a minute. But certainly, as far as our attendance policy for our semester-long courses, if you have more than 7 unexcused absences, that's unexcused, then you could lose credit. And for a full year class, it's anything over 14 absences for the year. So it's a pretty big number. So we feel that the children should be in school, learning and engaged. Now, that being said, in this age of streaming and COVID protocols, if your child is in cohort A, for example, and they arrive on Mondays and Tuesdays, or they're in cohort B, which is Thursday, Friday live, if they're not feeling well and they can't come, they are free to still join remotely. Now, technically, they would be marked absent. They're physically not in the class. So if you saw that absence, we don't want you to get upset, because the teachers will also code that they joined remotely or they were present remotely. Now, you may not see that as a parent. You might not see that code. You might just see the A as absent because they physically weren't in class. They're not able to come to school. Better safe than sorry. They can stream from home, but we have that notation and we see that in the office, and we're aware of that they weren't in school physically, but they were able to attend remotely, which is certainly very, very important so they don't miss the content. We certainly have help available. We want students to reach out. We have an after-school support program. Teachers stay after school 2 days. Every teacher is mandated to stay 2 days after school for extra help. And obviously, with our streaming and remote mechanism, kids can reach out almost like an office hours kind of a situation for extra help in their classes with their teachers. I do want to mention our after-school enrichment and support program is available on Mondays, Tuesdays, and also Thursdays and Fridays. We have a late bus that comes at 4 o'clock, and students can take that late bus if they're involved in the after-school program if they need additional support. Also, they have at times enrichment programs. Students can earn credit, enrichment credit, if they maybe in the past they've had some culinary classes, maybe some art classes, mindfulness, some really nice cooperative gaming. There's a lot of different activities, enrichment activities that the students can engage in an after-school setting. And again, there is a 4 o'clock late bus if they are involved in the after-school program and they need extra help. There's help available that way. And now I'll turn it over to Mr. Mello.
Thank you so much. So the next thing that is on our list here is getting involved, and it really is an important thing to encourage your son, your daughter to look up some of our clubs, our sports, and it's going to look different this year. Some of them may be virtual. Some of them haven't even been decided yet. We are still working on that list, and we are going to send it out to the freshmen and parents as soon as that is available. And they'll be able to kind of look at it and see what they're interested in. And there are so many options that there should be something that, they might have an interest in and want to try. It looks good to be involved in something throughout your years of high school. So that is something we encourage. It's also nice to have that connection to the school. So that is for that. And then we do want your child to start to get to know their school counselor. So we've introduced ourselves to you. We are going to be holding freshman meetings, and we're going to introduce ourselves to all of the students that we have, and really tell them what we do and how we can help. And as you saw on the previous screen, we do a lot. We work with college and career, get them ready each year for something different and trying to find their pathway. We also work with them for academics. So if they are struggling, and I know some of the questions that people were concerned about were, how to assist remote learners and things like that. And we are trying our best to get to see them. We're having Google Meets. I know teachers all have the Google Classrooms, and they can still go for after help the same way that Mr. Amato was talking about virtually. So there is always that time that they can see their teachers. They can go virtually to the after school program. So there are all of these options. And if for some reason, they don't feel like they're being helped the way they need, please get in touch with us, because we want to try and figure that out. And we'd like to help you as soon as we can instead of waiting. So encourage them to come talk to us virtually or not. And as we've talked about throughout this whole thing, we do work with social emotional. We have extra support from our adjustment counselors, which is wonderful. And as soon as
they feel that they could have any kind of need, please encourage them to come talk to us. We really want them to have a successful year and are happy to talk or assist or reach out anytime. So thank you.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Carrigan, can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
Regarding the attendance policy, I was remiss in not mentioning that, again, unexcused absences. Now, if it's an excused absence, heaven forbid, a family tragedy or a funeral or something, a doctor's note, doctor's appointment, anytime they have a doctor's note, that is considered an excused absence. So I just want to clarify that. So again, unexcused would be, just even if they're sick, you don't go to the doctor every time you're sick. I understand that. But again, you have a certain number. Again, 7, no more than 7 in a semester-long class, no more than 14 in a full year class. But there are excused absences, if they have a legal issue or court appearance, or if they're, going for your driver's license, maybe, junior year, permit or driver's license appointments are excused. And again, doctor's notes are excused. Just want to clarify that.
If you have questions about the attendance policy, you can look at my student handbook. There's a whole section devoted to that there. Okay, so now we're going to turn things over to Mrs. Seelig and Mrs. Cunha to really talk about some important tools that we think would be great to get your kids and for you to get familiar with.
Hi, so I guess I can start. So Mr. Amato brought up earlier the Infinite Campus, which is a great way to help track your kids. So your students all have Google Classroom, and that's where a lot of their assignments are going to be posted. Information from their teacher about those assignments will be posted, but then you'll see them again in Infinite Campus. And in Infinite Campus is where they're graded. So you'll see if your student is missing an assignment, if their assignments are late, that's also marked. So there's different ways to keep track of them. I agree with Mr. Amato when he says, don't check it every day. Every teacher does different things. So perhaps figure out a day to sit down with your student. Maybe Monday's your day where you sit down and you plan out the week for them, or Sunday night and you say, looks like you still have some zeros from last week. Let's reach out to your teacher, help them advocate for themselves. This is a great time for them to figure out how to email their teacher, which you can do right in the Infinite Campus app. So the kiddos have their app and they have their classes and their teachers are listed. And they can click right on the teacher's name and it'll use their email, so they can send an email right to the teacher. And you could say, hi, Mrs. Hayes, I do believe I passed that assignment in on Wednesday. I see it's still in as a 0. Is there any way you could check that for me, or I can send it to you again? So that's a great way to use Infinite Campus and help your child advocate for themselves and keep track of assignments with them. Another app that we think is an important tool for your kids is Quizlet. They have it's an app where you can put in different information from different classes. So you could make your own set of flashcards and use it to study. The kids can then use them as flashcards where you see the question and then they tap it and the definition could be the other side, or a math problem, the answer could be on the other side. They could use it to write things in. So just like you would have a piece of paper and the questions would be on it and you have to write the answers in, it's the same thing. So you have to write the correct answer in, and if you don't know it, you can check it. So it's a really great tool. They can give themselves time tests. There's games to make it fun, all with the information they input from the courses that they're taking. You can kind of look up, like say biology, and look up biology terms and stuff, but there are other things that other students have made. So we encourage the kids to do it themselves, kind of as backing up the information that they're learning, because the information that is on there could be in other students and maybe not be correct. There is Khan Academy is another tool. Eventually next year, your kiddos will be offered to take the PSATs. And a lot of this stuff is already happening in the classroom with your kids. The English teachers or the math teachers may help the kids link their PSATs to Khan Academy. And that's if your student is thinking about moving on to a 4-year degree. So they can link their College Board and their Khan Academy, and it pulls questions them to practice on. There's also subject areas in Khan Academy that kids can use as a tool to help them study. So there's lots of different apps and stuff that they can access right on their phones, which are usually attached to them a little bit anyway, and access really great tools to help them in school.
Okay, I do see Dr. Jones on this call, and Dr. Jones, I don't know if you would want to say hello and perhaps talk about the Panther Press newsletter that you put out.
Sure, I guess. I'm a little bashful, but I guess I'll say hello.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, welcome to Whitman Hanson Regional High School. I'm so glad to see the number of you here, finding out the information that you can find out. And I just have to put in a plug before the Panther Press for our awesome counseling department. We have a lot of dedicated staff members that are here to help your student in any way possible, and they do a great job at it. So please, I always say communicate earlier rather than later, because we want to get to anything that might become an issue before it gets too large. And typically most things that occur, most questions that come up, if they don't have to get blown up by rumor or anything like that. So if there's any kind of struggle, any kind of question, make use of your counselors. They're a great department that you'll find very useful in your next 4 years here at the high school. So welcome. I don't want to take too much time because they're giving you all kinds of great information. I will, as Mrs. Seelig asked me to do, talk about the Panther Press. It's a weekly newsletter that comes out on Sundays, and it is packed full of all kinds of information. We have important dates. If there's an award a student won, we put it in there. We have around town announcement things. There's usually a message from me as far as a video message having to do with something about character or behavior or something along those lines, perspective, things like that. We often have the assistant principal put something in. There's a whole student counseling section, and we often have different departments put things in and different clubs put things in. So if there's something going on at the high school that you want to know about, the Panther Press is a good place to start on a Sunday evening or Monday morning. We usually have some videos in there about what's going on around school called Our Story. And once sports get fired up, we're going to have some sports shorts, little video recaps of the week in there as well. So if you have any questions when you get this, you can hit reply, you can email, and it goes right to me, and I'll be responsive to that. If you aren't getting it, know that you should be getting it, and email me with the address that you want it sent to, and I can set you up that way. So big thing is communication. There are going to be a lot of questions as your students start out, especially if you haven't had any older siblings come in. Make sure you ask them and talk to us. We'll do our best to help you out and support you with whatever you need.
Thank you so much. And just to reiterate, communication, I think, seems to be the theme here of the morning, and we certainly encourage that. And these are all great tools to use to help with that communication piece. And obviously, anytime you have a question, please feel free to reach out. The tools that I'm going to talk about are going to be Naviance and the Occupational Outlook Handbook. So we talked a little bit earlier about that career and college readiness piece. And these are the two tools that we often use with your kids to help with that process. So
Courtney, do you want me to go to Naviance?
Yes, please. Okay. So typically you and your child would access Naviance through the Clever domain. So everyone already has their account set up that way. So you can certainly log on yourself, and we can set you up with your own individual account, or you can log in with your son or daughter. So right now, the freshman class does not have their full access yet. We do that when we first go into their classrooms, which will be in the social studies class to do the interest inventory. And that we will get them all linked into their account. Like I said, we can link you into their account as well, so you don't have to rely on them for their username and password information. If you would like to join your child's Naviance account, just email your son or daughter school counselor, and we can get that set up for you. But this is where, when Mrs. Kerrigan was talking about that school counseling curriculum, this is where it's all housed. We love to view this program as really that electronic portfolio that your child is building every single year to help them take that next step beyond the walls of Whitman Hanson. So this is a tool that we use all the time. This is how your child will apply to college eventually. But right now, let's just go through a couple of the areas that we can show you for the interest inventories. So I just have to move my screen. So under the About Me tab, this is a good place to start. One of the questions that we always get is about that GPA. And like Mr. Amato mentioned, freshman year counts, and that those grades are being factored into your GPA. So you can always access your GPA information in Naviance. It is not available through Infinite Campus. It is only available through Naviance. So if you went under the About Me section and went into My Account, and if you scroll to the bottom, there lies the GPA, your weighted and your unweighted GPA. Again, freshman students don't have a GPA just yet, but as soon as this year is through, it will be updated and you can access that information. The other piece that would be important to talk about under the About Me tab is this is where all those interest inventories are going to be stored. So if you go under My Assessments, after your child, and the first one is that Holland interest inventory, this is where it will be all stored for them. You can always go back and access and see what were some of their results, what kind of career choices are popping up for them. So we have a whole program to help them take the interest inventory, and then we go through a lesson with them about identifying, what are my areas of strength? What do I, value in a working environment? Am I a night owl? Am I a morning person? Do I want to travel? Those are all the conversations that we like to start having right away in their freshman year. And again, all of this is stored here, so you can always access that. After they take an interest inventory, you can click on the link that says See Matching Careers. And this provides, again, detailed information that have some interest to your child. It does talk about, this is the first one, you can see it's under the sum preparation category. And this might mean, it's a good way to kind of gauge, okay, what kind of level of preparation would I need beyond high school? Some might be, some post-secondary training. Some might be, I could do that with my high school diploma. And sometimes we like to highlight this area too with the kids, especially freshman, sophomore years, because a lot of them do want to get a job, make some money right now. So this might help them with that first start. I mean, our typical jobs are at the grocery store or Dunkin' Donuts, Mary Lou's, places like that, but it's a good place to start. And then you can see some medium preparation that might require a 2-year degree, that associate's degree. Considerable prep would be that 4-year degree, that bachelor's degree, and extensive, a master's degree or a doctorate degree beyond. So this is a great way to not only talk about different career choices, but also just, what would that look like after I graduated? What would I have to do to be able to do that career? And then, of course, there is a great tab for when you are doing college searches and when you're ready for that step. And that isn't something we start to kind of really do until sophomore, junior year, but certainly it's there for you and available. So you can do a simple college search. Kids can look up, oh, hey, I know Bridgewater is right around the corner. It has a great reputation. It's something that I'm thinking about. You can just search a college and all the information is in there for you. Colleges pay to be a part of Naviance, so they want as much information as they can have on that page. Certainly you could go to the college website as well. And if it's a school that you're thinking about that you actually like, you can save that as well into your Naviance account. So again, we're building that electronic portfolio, and you can see added by, you could see it could be added by a counselor, it could be added by your son or daughter, and then you could also add different colleges or post-secondary options in here as well. And again, back to that communication, I think sometimes, when we get to this step, it's a great way to kind of keep everybody on the same page without necessarily having to have that conversation all the time. That can often end in sometimes a struggle that we know. So you could see, hey, I saw Mrs. Seelig put in Babson College. What did you think about Babson? I didn't really know that you were, interested in that school. Let's talk about it. Should we go and do a tour or a virtual visit? So it's a good way to kind of start that conversation. If you want to click on any of those, Mrs. Kerrigan, we can kind of see what it would look like. So if we look at Bridgewater State, they're going to give a nice virtual tour option on here for you. It will also give you some really great testimonials from students. It will also give you, your basic information that you would want to know. What is the graduation rate, acceptance rate, college overlaps. College overlaps means, what other colleges did Whitman-Hanson students also apply to that also want to have interest in Bridgewater State. So again, my best suggestion is to log in and get an account and just play around. You can't mess anything up. It's all stored in there. And I just think it's just one of those tools that's really helpful and just become comfortable with it. We do have a Naviance night for parents, for sophomore and junior parents, usually in the springtime. So we'll have a whole night dedicated to all of this. The one last thing I do want to show you in Naviance, though, is because it is that electronic portfolio and every student has a Naviance account, we've stored the data for all Whitman-Hanson students since 2010 in Naviance. And what I mean by that is we've stored their GPA and their SAT information. It's not identifiable by students. You can never see that information. But what it does is help guide you in that process when you are thinking about taking that next step of, where are Whitman-Hanson students going to school? Where did they get in based on their GPA and SAT scores? So you can kind of see right here under the admissions tab, our history, how many people got in, applied, accepted, enrolled. If you scroll further down, as soon as that GPA and PSAT score information is in here, like Ms. Cunha mentioned, by sophomore year, that will be plotted on a scattergram for you, as you can see. So you will always show up as that blue little circle guy right there. And that person is me. And I am around a lot of green checks. And those green checks means that students similar to my profile based on GPA and SAT scores from Whitman-Hanson that applied to Bridgewater State University were accepted. So this is a good shot for me. We really kind of point this out that sophomore year and junior year, because you know what, if my blue circle kind of fell into some of that red, and I knew that kids had, like me, had a similar profile with the GPA and SAT score that didn't get in, that gives me a little bit of time to kind of make some changes. Maybe I want to do some SAT prep. Maybe I want to make sure I'm staying after school and taking my classes maybe a little bit more seriously, asking questions to bring my grade up. So that way they have plenty of time to make some changes. So again, there's a wealth of information in Naviance. I would just go ahead and explore. If we go back to the homepage, the other website that I am going to just mention that we use with them is called the Occupational Outlook Handbook. And this is probably my second favorite tool with Naviance. And what it is a website that is information is pulled together by the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics. And not only do we want kids to be happy in their career choices, match to their interests and personalities and, the work environment that they want to be in, we also want to make sure that they're preparing for a job that's going to be there when they graduate. And this is a beautiful website to do that. So what they've done is compiled data for all different career choices and projected that growth rate from 2019 to 2029. And if you just pick on any of the occupation groups, it's a nice little cluster. Again, a lot of this information is in Naviance as well. Healthcare is certainly one of our most popular career choices for students. So it will give you an overview of what are some healthcare options. This is a whole list. If we just want to pick one, we can go with athletic trainers. And what it will do is give you an overview of the job right away on that homepage. It gives you the average salary. And then also, again, that job outlook. So is that job going to be there when I am done preparing for it? And we can see that it's growing at a 16% rate, which is much faster than the national average. So having the data based on myself, my personality, my interests, and then having background of what that job entails, and then going to see, hey, I can make a decent amount of money at this job. I can see right now the entry level is a bachelor's degree, so that 4 years beyond my high school experience, and it's growing at a 16% rate. Hey, I have a really good chance of having that job be available to me when I graduate. So that would be a good investment of my time and my money to prepare for a job in athletic training. So again, another great tool just to kind of play around with. It also does all different career choices and level of education. So it's not necessarily just that 4-year degree or a 2-year degree. It does have a lot of post-secondary training options. If we look at the similar occupations, it will say, hey, I did like the athletic trainer. I don't really, right now 4-year college isn't really my style. What are some other similar occupations that would be kind of matched to an athletic trainer? And you can click on that tab and you can see, oh, an EMT, I've heard about that before. Let me do some research. I can click on that. I can see, oh, wow, all right. So make it $35,000 per year. That's a great salary to start off with. And it's just post-secondary education. So that's typically about 1 year to 2 years after high school. Some programs are in 6 months. And it's still growing at a 6% rate, which again is still faster than the national average. So this might be a better option for me to start off with. So again, this has all different career choices in here, all different levels of education beyond the high school or with a high school diploma. And it's just another great way to kind of tie in that career and college readiness that we do with your son and daughter.
Thanks, Mrs. Seelig. Okay, so I'm going to stop that share and then go back to our PowerPoint. And now I'm going to ask our interns. Let's get our PowerPoint moving.
We have one more. Is that okay if I jump in?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So just to wrap up the tools is a lot of we talked about Google Classroom, where all the assignments are going to be posted by their teachers, and then then they're going to transfer over, and they're all going to be graded in Infinite Campus, and it's a lot to kind of organize. So an agenda app might be exactly what your kiddos need. They already have in Google Calendar, and that might be one way that they kind of put their assignments in. The Google Meets already show up for them, for their teachers, because that's linked to them already. So Google Classroom and Google Calendar might be the perfect app for them. I've also kind of checked out some other apps, and I texted my niece earlier this morning to say she's very, very organized and ask her what she did. And she said there's an app that she uses that's free called Agenda Homework, and she can schedule when everything's due, and then she can look at her schedule and know that tomorrow she has an English essay about me due, and then she has a project. So you can kind of put in all the stuff that's in that Google Classroom and organize it with your students. So making freshman year maybe a little bit easier, it organized with all the classes that they'll be juggling. And then one other app would be the DMV app, because before you know it, these little freshmen will be going to get their permit and trying to get their driver's license. And there's a DMV app that helps them study for the test. So that's another one that you can check out with them. And then finally, Twitter. There's so much information on Twitter. Dr. Jones posts on Twitter. Mrs. Seelig is in charge of our school counseling Twitter, and you can follow us at WHRHS Guidance that you see on your screen. That's important for anything that's going on here, stuff that we've done. You know, sometimes talking to your kid, you're like, what happened at school today? Nothing. But the teachers post like all the things that they do all day, and Dr. Jones goes in and takes pictures and posts them, and we post upcoming events and things that we're holding. And Mrs. Seelig always posts, something happy and uplifting. And there's also scholarships. So when that comes out down the road, she'll post when those come up. So lots and lots of information on Twitter. So if you're on there, it'd be great if you wanted to follow us.
Great, thanks, Mrs. Cunha. We can't stress enough to follow us on Twitter, because anything that's coming out from the department, anything we want to share with you, signups, news, it's all there. So that's the best way to stay in touch with us. Okay, so now we have some of our final tips for success, and we're going to ask Ms. Campbell and Ms. Bradshaw to lead us through that part.
Thank you, Mrs. Kerrigan. So some final tips for success. First, you want to help your teen get and stay organized. So like Mr. Amato or Mrs. Cunha were suggesting, maybe one night a week, get together with your student and help them create an agenda or a calendar, and maybe just check in on their assignments and try to get into a routine. Next, you want to make sure your teen is getting enough sleep. And I do think that those kind of go hand in hand. Make your mornings a little bit easier if they're getting enough sleep. And if they're organized, maybe set out their clothes the night before. Make sure they're getting up at the same time. And, it's really ideal to help them be refreshed and ready for success.
And maybe move their phone out of the bedroom if they're tending to be on their phone all night long, which happens to a lot of teenagers. So.
So kind of to go along with that, it's always a good idea to periodically check in with your students' social media presence, just kind of making sure things are staying appropriate. This day and age, everything seems to end up online. So it's always just a good idea not to hover as often as I'm sure you'd like to, but just sort of do some check-ins. And I know some serious trouble can come from social media. So just be aware of that. Ms. Robichaud, did you want to add in anything there?
Yeah, sure. So I completely agree. Reminding them about what they post. it could jeopardize things at school. It could jeopardize their character, and that just because they delete something doesn't mean it's gone forever. And one thing we're seeing a lot of these days is students screenshot different things and show other people, and that's how things kind of go on and on and on, and then become dramatic at school. So I think just be aware of what they're posting. Remind them not to post any private information. Keep their settings private. The platforms are constantly changing, so try to keep up to date with that. Set rules and guidelines. Encourage them to have open conversation with you. If they see something concerning, that they should say something to someone. Some people post things that could be a cause for concern, so they should always say something. But also be aware there is a new thing. It's called social media depression, and a lot of kids find themselves in this depression sometimes, or maybe they seem down because there was a party they weren't invited to, or a group chat they got kicked out of because someone was mad at them that day. Or some people always post happy things, and kids might say like, oh, I don't have these experiences. Why is my life not like that? When in reality, like, people usually post happy things, not unhappy things. So it's not always reality. But kids too, sometimes if they post something and don't get enough likes, then they think people are mad at them, and then they kind of spin and they're driving themselves crazy thinking they're missing out or people are mad at them. When in reality, it's probably not that at all. It's just maybe they didn't even see the post, or maybe someone didn't check it that day. So just have open conversations with them about social media, because this is one of the things that comes up very often, and how people are communicating nowadays. If you have any questions about any of that or any concerns, please feel free to reach out. We can try to help you at any time as well.
Caitlin, any advice on how to, I mean, we usually talk about monitoring screen time so that, kids are not on it constantly. Now it's kind of challenging because everything seems to be online. Any advice for that?
So I agree with you, and I'm struggling with this at home as well, because usually we use our screens as like a reward, right? Like, oh, you did all your homework, go use your iPad for 30 minutes and play a game. So I think you just have to have that healthy balance and talk to your kids, because kids are going to start getting fatigued. So you get screen fatigue, and then you can get headaches, and then it can also cause you to stay up at night. So talking to your students about that, you're not trying to keep them off of it, but they need to find other ways to kind of spend some of their time. And I think increments, like have 15 minutes, take 15 minutes off, have 20 minutes, take 20 minutes off, and really work yourselves into a routine. I do it myself because we are on screens all day. So, I like to scroll through Facebook too. I'm human. But I have to give myself time to do that, and then time to do other things. So I think it's hard because I know that's how they communicate with their friends and everything as well, and they can't really hang out as much. So I think setting kind of a schedule with them so that way they're taking screen breaks is going to be really important.
Thank you.
Okay, and then just to touch upon attendance again, I know Mr. Amato did a good job of going through this in detail, but just making sure that not only physically showing up on the days your students might have class in school, but making sure they're logging in on a timely fashion to their online platform. So if they have class at 7:05, if they were in school, it's just the same. They got to be up and ready to be attendant to their online.
I think,
and then also,
I just want to add, in high school, it might have been easy in middle school to, take a week off in the middle of March because that was the best time to travel to Disney. I guess we don't have to worry too much about Disney right now, but it's really hard for kids if they're out of school for a week in high school to catch up. They may be able to remotely, attend their classes, but, if you're traveling and it's away from school and it's during school time, it's really difficult in high school to catch up. So we really encourage you, when we're back to being able to plan vacations, to plan during the school vacation so that they're not missing class.
Yes. And then just finally, just support and encourage your teen to become his or her own advocate. And as a freshman, this is a little bit tough, but the sooner you get your foot in the door and get in that habit, the better off you'll be. This can be like, say your student is having a hard time with a math concept or whatever it might be, just taking that extra step to email or just hang back after class to connect one-on-one with your teacher. And I know a lot of teachers are offering office hours now, so that's a good opportunity to just kind of develop a relationship one-on-one. And that translates down the line too, once it comes time to ask for recommendations and such. So it's a good idea the earlier the better with that kind of thing.
And I think I'm just going to add, as a mom of two young men now, I was actually really guilty of not, especially my youngest son, he had a learning disability, and I was kind of like the protective bear mama, always kind of leading the way for him. And I realize now that that really is kind of a disservice to him. I should have encouraged him to do more. I mean, if there's a problem with a teacher or a question or a counselor, we would encourage you to have your child actually make those connections to help develop those skills. And I know I'm guilty of it too. But again, anything you can do to kind of let go and give that power really to your child to, again, become his or her own advocate. It will serve them well in high school and in life beyond as well. So at this point, our formal presentation is over, but we definitely have some time for questions. I'm going to stop the share. And Mrs. Cunha, have you seen anything in the chat come up?
Dr. Jones did put in his link to his Twitter page, as well as the Our Athletic Twitter page. So those are two other great Twitter feeds to follow that Ms. Cunha mentioned. So those are the links directly to those accounts.
Great. One of the questions that we got prior to the program, and Dr. Jones, I see you're on here, so you can help answer that. But some of the questions were the student, schedule change from 7 periods to 6 periods. So students lost the opportunity for some electives. And one of the questions was, will students have a chance to make those up? Will graduation requirements change? So what are your answers to that, Dr. Jones?
Well, those are great questions with no easy answers. So thanks for throwing that over to me.
Sorry.
As far as credits required for graduation requirements and things like that, typically students have the opportunity to earn more credits than they need to graduate. So there is that buffer. But if we do run into any kind of situation where a student is missing credits that they need to graduate, we'll make some adjustments on our end. As far as wholesale graduation requirement changes, we're not really going to see those, with the idea that this crisis that we're undergoing right now is not going to last forever. But, we will be looking back. Say we are 4 years from now and one of your students is short credits, not through necessarily any fault of their own, but they just didn't have the opportunity to take them because this happened 4 years ago. We'll have the ability to look back 4 years and say, you know what? They really got shorted that year that we had the different amount of classes during COVID, and we'll adjust as needed. As far as making up electives and things like that, if they're required electives, they'll definitely have chances to make them up. We realize that might tighten or lessen their choice in their schedule, as it has been in the past, but we're hoping that once we get on the other side of this, we're not going to see much issue with that as far as choice and electives. But we're not going to hold a student accountable and punish them, so to speak, for lack of a better term, for our change in schedule that had a lack of electives that they could get credit-wise or anything like that. So a little less choice. Short answer, a little less choice. And they won't be held responsible in 4 years if they find themselves short credits due to our scheduling issues.
Great, thank you. At this point, I think most of the questions in the chat have been answered. Does anybody have a question? You're welcome to unmute yourself, and we are here to answer anything that you might be asking or thinking about. Okay, well, we want to thank you for coming this morning. Please know you are welcome to reach out to your school counselor at any time. And again, all the contact information has been provided to you. We will also be sending out an evaluation to you a little bit later today. So please take a few minutes to fill that out. We do use what you say. It helps inform our programming, and we often will make adjustments and maybe add more things based on what our families and parents have to say. So we really appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending your time with us, and we hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks, everybody.